Hello everyone. Today we are going to look at 6.6 investigating models of sinusoidal functions. So for these types of questions we will be given some information and we are going to write the equation of sine or cosine function using these informations. So let's look at example 1. Determine the equation of the cosine function whose graph has the following features. So amplitude is given 6, period is 120, equation of axis is y equals -5, and phase shift is -70 degree. So let's write the transformations for sine or cosine functions. So y equals a times sine k times x minus d plus c, and for cosine it is the same thing, a times cosine k times x minus d plus c. So amplitude is the a value, but sometimes it may be negative based on the given information. You will have to decide. So period is going to help you to calculate the k value, and phase shift is giving you the d value, and equation of axis is the c value. Okay, so y equals 6 cosine, so k value we have to calculate. We said that period equals 360 divided by k. If you reorganize this equation and then isolate k from here, then you get k equals 360 degree divided by the period. Okay, so in this case period is 120, so 360 divided by 120 gives you 3, so k value is 3. Open a bracket. Now x, so phase shift is -70, so x minus -70, okay, and equation of axis is -5. So if you get rid of those two double signs, so we get 6 cosine 3 x plus 70 degree -5. I showed this step, but if you see that the phase shift is to the left, you always will see a positive sign here. So you don't have to take this step directly. You can write the equation. Okay, so let's look at the next example. We are given a chart. Okay, so when x is 0, y is -2. When x is 30 degree, y is 1. And then it goes. Okay, so it may be hard to directly do it from the chart. You may want to sketch the graph using the given information and then write the equation from there. So in this case, we have a minimum value of -2, maximum value of 1. So this 1, so if you calculate the horizontal, so vertical distance from -2 to 1 is 3 units. From 1 to 4 is another 3 units. So looks like our zeros are happening at y equals 1. Okay, so if I sketch this here, so y equals 1 is here, maximum is 4, and minimum is -2. Okay, so x is 0, y is -2, x is 30 degree, y is 1, x is 60, y is 4, 90, y is 1, and 120, y is -2 again. So looks like that is the pattern. Okay, so I kind of see the one full period, so you may want to continue, but even this much will be enough to find the equation. So again, what do we need to find? A, K, D, and C. Okay, so what is the amplitude? Amplitude, again, is the vertical distance from the axis to the maximum, or from axis to the minimum. So in this case, from 1 to 4 is 3 units. You could also do it from here. That would also give you 3 units. So y equals 3. And we are going to decide if we need to put negative or positive sign. So the question is not telling you to use sine function or cosine function. Actually, there are infinite number of answers for this question. So I'm going to show you a few, but we usually want to write the equation with the smallest phase shift. Okay, so 3. Then you can decide what function to use. So if you start from here, that would be sine function. If you start from the minimum, that would be negative cosine. If you start from maximum, that would give you positive cosine. Okay, so in this case, if we start from a minimum, that would give us again the negative cosine. So negative cosine. So now I need to put the k value. K value is 360 divided by the period. So let's look at the period here. If you go from 0 to 0, from minimum to minimum, so we see that horizontal distance is 120. You could definitely go from maximum to maximum. That would also give you 120. If you are going to use the zeros to calculate the period, you can go start from 1, 0, then not the first, but the second 0 to calculate the period. But they should all give you the same answer. So in this case, which is 120. Okay? Then the k value is 3. So we get 3x, and now we are going to look at the d value, which is the phase shift. So if we start from the minimum, and then we don't have any phase shift if we use negative cosine, right? Because let's look at negative cosine again. The negative cosine theta starts from a minimum, go to 0, go to max, go to 0 and minimum. So then there is no phase shift if we take it as a negative cosine function. So then 3x, no phase shift, plus the c value. C value is 1. Okay, so that would be one of the possible answers. So let's write it with a sine function. Okay, so when you're writing with a sine, so you have to see that so a, k, and c values will remain the same. The only difference will be the phase shift. Okay, so I know that my a is going to be 3, k is going to be 3, and c is going to be 1. Okay, they are going to stay the same. The only thing I need to decide for the phase shift. Okay, so if you use this point as a start point for sine, okay, so then check the next point. So that's the maximum. So that would give you a positive sign, right? Because 0 max 0 min 0 is for the positive sine theta. So then if this is the start point, then what is the phase shift? We see 30 degree to the right. So that gives you x minus 30 degree. Okay, so let's write one more. So let's again use maximum this time. Okay, so let's say this is our start point. If that is your start point, so again the a value, k value, and the c value is going to remain the same. So 3, let me write it here. So y equals, okay, so amplitude is the same. So if you are starting from the maximum, then you are taking a positive cosine, k value is 3. So let's look at the phase shift now, and we know that c value is going to be 1. Okay, so if this is the start point, that point was for positive cosine function was supposed to be on the y-axis, but now we see that it moved 60 degree to the right. So there's a phase shift 60 degree to the right. So x minus 60 degree. Okay, so let me write even one more. Okay, how about if I take this key point as a start point? So if that is the case, then this is the pattern: 0 min, 0 max, 0. Okay, so that will give you a negative sine function. So negative 3 sine 3 plus 1. Okay, again, a, k, and c values are the same. So now we're going to check the phase shift. Okay, So again, if this is our start point, so which was for negative sine theta, so this was supposed to be on y-axis, but it is now happening at 90 degree. So it moved 90 degree to the right. So x minus 90 degree. So actually, again, so there are infinite number of solutions for this kind of questions, but the preferable answer is writing the equation with minimum phase shift. Then the first equation that we wrote is the best answer for this question. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Again, we are given a chart. So you may want to sketch it quickly, okay? So maximum value is 24, minimum value is 10, and looks like these zeros are happening at 17. So we have negative 10, negative 40, negative 70, and 20, 50, 80, and 110. Okay, so let's put those points, negative 70 and 17, negative 40 and 24, negative 10 and 17, 20 and 10, and 50 and 17. So my graph is not scaled, but we kind of can see what's going on here. Okay, so let's write the equation. A value, so that is the vertical distance from equation of axis to maximum or minimum. So in this case, equation of axis is y equals 17. So the difference between 17 and 24 is 7 units. So amplitude is 7 units. Okay, so pick your start point. So then if you want to have the smallest phase shift, so you need to look at those key points and pick the one that is closest to y-axis. Okay, so looks like this point is the closest to y-axis. The difference between that point, horizontal distance between that point and the y-axis is 10 units. Okay, so if that is your start point, so that's a 0. So you know that you are going to have a sine function then, and then check the next point on the right. The next point on the right is minimum. Okay, so if then the pattern is 0, min, 0, max, 0, that will give you a negative sine function. So negative sine. Calculate the k value. 360 divided by period. What is the period in this case? If you go from 0 to the second 0, so you need to look at the horizontal distance from negative 70 to 50. From negative 70 to 0 is 70. From 0 to 50, 50. If you add them, you get 120. Then the k value is 3 units. So 3. Now you need to look at the phase shift. So phase shift 10 units or 10 degree to left. Okay, so that gives you x plus 10 degree. And now the equation of axis, y equals 17, is gonna go here. Let's write it one with the cosine. Okay, so for cosine, the closest cosine, so you need to start from a maximum or minimum. Okay, so this maximum is 40 units from y-axis, and the minimum is 20 units from the y-axis. So it is better if we take this minimum point as a start point. Okay, so if we do that, so 7 cosine, check if it is positive or negative. Okay, so if you start from a minimum, if that is your start point, then that's a negative cosine, because if it is positive cosine, then you have to start from positive. So maximum point. Okay, and the k is gonna remain the same, c is gonna remain the same. Now we need to check the phase shift. Phase shift, we see that it is 20 degrees to the right. It's not on the y-axis, but it is 20 degrees to the right. So x minus 20 degrees. Okay. Let's look at example 3. determine a sine and the cosine equation for each sinusoidal functions. Okay, so again, we need to find A, K, D, and C values. So we see that maximum is 4, minimum is 2. Equation of axis, then y equals 3. Okay. So what is A? What is the amplitude? From equation of axis, or from axis to the maximum, or from axis to the minimum. So from 3 to 4 is 1 unit, or from 3 to 2 it is 1 unit. So A is 1. So I don't even need to write it. Okay. So now decide, let's say start with the sine function. Okay. So A value is 1. We didn't write it. Now we need the K value. Okay. So K is 360 divided by period. What is the period? So if you start from a 0, you go first and second 0. So that would be 1 period. Okay. So that is 180 degrees. So 360 divided by 180 gives you 2. Okay. So now check the phase shift. So if it's a sine function, it starts from a 0. Okay. And then check the next point. It's maximum. Okay. So if it is maximum after a 0, then it gives you positive sign. So this is going to be positive sign. Okay. And then what is the phase shift? Well, so that start point is on y-axis, no phase shift. So just 2x. Now plus the c values, which is 3. So let's write the cosine function. So a is same, 1. K is same. C is same. So again, the only difference between those two equations will be the phase shift. For cosine, so you can start from a maximum for positive cosine, minimum from a negative cosine. So it looks like maximum is closer to the y-axis. So we're going to, prefer to write it with positive cosine function. So then what is this point? We cannot see it clearly, right? It's not marked. Then you have to calculate. So 1 period is 180. Quartile periods, or those key points, are happening every quartile period. 180 divided by 4 gives you 45 degrees. So those key points are happening every 45 degrees. Okay, so then 0. So this is 45. Even though it is not written there, you can calculate. So that's 45 degree to the right. So x minus 45 degree. Okay. So let's look at the next one. Y equals, again, let's start with sine function. Amplitude. So first you have to look at the equation of axis. In this case, maximum is 3, minimum is negative 3. So then the equation of axis is y equals 0. Okay. Then a value is the distance from the equation of axis to the maximum or to minimum. That is 3 units. 3. Okay. Then let's look at the k value. K value is 360 divided by the period. So for this one, so we can start from a 0, go to the second 0. So it looks like 180 is 1 period. That gives us k being 2. Okay. Now phase shift. So sine function starts from a 0, go to max, go to 0. Okay. So then this is a 0, and it is exactly at origin. So it is on the y-axis. So it looks like there's no phase shift if we use sine function. Plus c is 0. Then I don't have to put it. So let's look at the cosine function. We're going to have 3 cosine 2, and c value is 0 here. Okay, so let's check the phase shift for cosine. So for positive cosine, we start from maximum. For negative cosine, we start from a minimum. So it looks like maximum point is closer to the y-axis. So then, that's what we pick, the maximum. Okay, then it is positive, we know that. Let's check the phase shift. Again, we don't know that point, right, here. But again, we can calculate it. So 1 period is 180. Divided by 4 gives you 45. So those key points are happening every 45 degree. So this is 0, then 45 is here. So x minus 45 degree. Let's look at C. Y equals sine. Okay. So what is the maximum point? 2. Minimum point, -2. So it looks like there's no vertical shift here. So the equation of axis is y equals 0. Amplitude is the vertical distance from equation of axis, or from axis to the maximum, or from axis to the minimum. So that is 2 units. So amplitude is 2 units. Okay. So let's look at the k value. K value is 360 divided by the period. So let's check one period. If we start from a 0, first and second 0. So it looks like one period is 360 degrees here. So it gives us k value being 1. Okay. So k is 1. So let's check the phase shift then. Okay. So if we start from this point, so what is the next point? It is a minimum. So 0, min, 0, max, 0. So it looks like this is like a negative sine function. Okay? If it's a negative sine function, since the start point is on y-axis, there is no phase shift. So I'll just put x here. And k value was 1. Plus c, and c is 0 in this case. Okay, so let's write the cosine function. We're going to have 2. We're going to have cosine. C value is 0, k value is 1. So we need to check for the phase shift. Okay. For cosine function, you start from minimum or maximum. Pick the one that is closer to y-axis. In this case, minimum is closer to y-axis. Then if you start from a minimum, if that is your start point, so then the pattern is min 0, min 0, max 0, and goes minimum. Okay, so then that's a negative pattern, negative cosine pattern. Okay, so then you need to look at the phase shift here. That's your start point. So again, it's not written, but one period is 360 divided by 4 gives you 90. So the key points are happening every 90 degree. So this is, if this is 0, then this is 90 degree. So x minus 90 degree. Okay. Let's look at the last example. Y equals sine a value. So it looks like maximum is 2, minimum is -2. So it looks like equation of axis is y equals 0. Okay. So the amplitude is the vertical distance from axis to max. So that gives you 2 units. So 2. So let's look at the k value. K is 360 divided by period. So let's look at the period. So again, you can start from 0 to go to the next 0, or you can start from the maximum, go to the next maximum, or you can start from minimum to go next minimum to find the period. Okay. In this case, if we start from a minimum, go to the next minimum, it is here. This horizontal distance is the period. So from 0 to 360. So 360 is the period. So the k value is 1 then. Okay, so k is 1. So now we're going to look at the phase shift. Okay, so for sine function, you need to start from a 0. So the first 0 I see is this one. This is the closest one to the y-axis. So that will give me the smallest phase shift. Okay, if this is your start point, okay, then the next point, you need to make sure to check the next key point, which is the maximum. So 0 max, 0 min. So that's a positive sine function pattern, right? So then this is going to be positive, you know that. Okay, so then the phase shift, that's 0 is not on the y-axis, but on, as it is not written, we need to calculate it, but it is moved to the right. Okay, so again, you can take the period 360, find the quarter period, divided by 4 gives you 90 degree. So that should be 0, 90 degree. Okay, so that start point is moved 90 degree to the right. So that is the phase shift. Plus c is 0. Okay, let's write the cosine function. Y equals 2 cosine. Okay, and c value is 0. You know that. Let's look at the cosine. So for cosine function, you start from maximum or minimum. So it looks like minimum is exactly on y-axis. Okay, so that will give the smallest phase shift. In this case, is going to give you 0 phase shift because it's exactly on the y-axis. So minimum 0, maximum 0, minimum. Again, it's a negative cosine pattern. Okay, and then k value is, we said 1. Okay, so let's look at the again phase shift, but in this case there is no phase shift. It's just x here. Now look, you can look at the homework on page 391.